So with how dominant Khabib looked at UFC 254 against Justin Gaethje, it begs the question, is Khabib Nurmagomedov the greatest fighter ever? You know, and to quickly answer that question, you can't say he's not. You can't say he's not. But personally, well, first off, let's just say why he could be. First of all, 29-0, the guy's never lost. He's defended his belt 3 times, not only 3 times, but against 1 former champion and 2 interim champions. I mean, Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje. I mean, that is no slouch of a lineup as far as title defenses goes. Of course, it's no 11, 12 title defenses like Demetrius Johnson, but the 3 people he defended it against are champions. You know what I mean? So with that being said, and just his performance as far as the fight against Justin Gaethje, his performance was unbelievable. I mean, that guy looked like he could not be touched. I don't think there's any 155-pound man on the planet that beats Khabib Nurmagomedov at UFC 254 in an MMA fight. That guy looked unstoppable. But when you say, is he the greatest of all time? Pound for pound, right? Obviously, he's the greatest lightweight ever. But when you talk about pound for pound, it's a little it's tough for me to say that he is definitively better than George St. Pierre or John Jones. And just those 2, I'll pretty much definitively say he's better than anybody else. But those 2, even maybe Demetrius Johnson, but I'll just stick with George St. Pierre and John Jones. It's tough for me to say without a doubt, yeah, Khabib is the greatest, greater than them. Obviously he's 29-0, and like I said, he's defeated a death's row of opponents, but George St. Pierre defended his belt so many times. He went up and he got the 185-pound belt. He did lose twice, but he avenged both his losses, So as far as that's concerned, he also did have his standout, incredible performances. It just seemed like the guy couldn't be touched, And John Jones, same thing. The guy hasn't lost, And if John Jones turns out to ever win a heavyweight championship, he'll also have 2 different belts, 2 different weight class belts, which will be something that you could argue in John Jones' favor as far as the pound for pound discussion goes, So with that being said, you could look at it as that, as far as career accolades go, well, George defended his belt more, he's a double champ, we'll say George is the greatest. But you could take it as, well, who was the greatest fighter? If you took a George St. Pierre, Khabib, and John Jones, and you somehow made them the same body weight, who wins that fight? And then, obviously that's an impossible question to answer. But if that's the way you look at it, I will say that this Khabib that fought at UFC 254, that guy, he didn't look like there was much room for error, I mean, Gaethje caught him a few times. He was landing his leg kicks. If he could have forced that fight to go 5 rounds, he was damaging the leg for sure. But man, once the fight hit the ground, Khabib was just on another level. And even when the fight was standing up, Khabib just looked dominant, just because you could tell that Justin was terrified of getting taken down, So with the threat of the takedown, improving the striking, and then the actual takedown itself, I mean, the guy just looked unstoppable. He looked unstoppable. So, yeah, it's tough for me to say he's not the greatest of all time. Everybody wanted him to fight George St. Pierre for the 30th fight. And obviously, if he beat George St. Pierre, he'd probably be the greatest ever, right? But I don't know, George St. Pierre's 39, he's not in his prime. I always thought, man, go up to 170 and fight Usman. That will really make you the greatest ever. But obviously, he's still arguably the greatest ever, and you can't argue he's not. Like I said, it's impossible for me to say he's better than Jones or GSP, but that goes for Jones and GSP as well. To me, those are the 3 greatest ever, but it's impossible to say one is greater than the other. But man, that Khabib that stepped in the cage against Justin Gaethje, that guy did not leave much room for error. He looked unbelievable.